Maybe.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. I turned the recording on, and we've got a lot going here. We've got we're kind of getting into the middle of the series, and I hope you all have been enjoying it. And I hope you all look at the bottom of the invite that I send out every Sunday to see what's coming up and make sure you're there to see them. If not, most of them have been recorded. Matter of fact, I think all but one so far has been recorded, and they're getting hung on the soarboulder.org website, the club's website. So you should be able to see them. There's one that technically, I don't know, you have to ask permission to see it. It wasn't intended that way, but if you ask permission, I get an email and I immediately just click that you get access to it. Apologize for that delay, but then I want to recognize that our president, Clemens, is online here. Not sure, do you have anything you want to say to the group before we get started, Clemens?
No, but maybe don't announce it all the time.
He tries to be modest, So at any rate, we are going to talk maintenance tonight. And as many of the club members know, our maintenance fell a little bit behind because last year we had the Workfest scheduled a couple times, and we got weathered out. Welcome to Boulder. And then the following year we knew we needed to catch up, and then we got hit with the pandemic, and so we've fallen a little bit behind. So in asking our various members,
Rex is here, by the way. I'm just admitting Rex. So
okay, well then we'll go back to the original schedule. Great. Is everybody okay with going back to the original schedule? Then John, since Rex is here, I'm just going to kind of hand it off to you. What we're going to do tonight is John Seaborn is going to have a conversation with Rex Mays. Rex is the dealer for Shimp Hearth. John will introduce him. And then after that, John is going to talk a little bit about our maintenance. He's going to give us some history on Workfest and when he was president and some of the things that he did. John's a pretty meticulous guy with gliders. And then we're going to follow that is John's talk with Bill Kaewert is put together a Workfest for the K21. And the K21 needs its own Workfest, and it needs a bunch of work. I mean, it's fine, it's flyable, but it isn't in the condition that we all want it to be. So with that, John Seaborn, please take it away and have a conversation with Rex, and let's hear what we can about maintenance. And I'll go silent here.
Thanks, Armand. I really appreciate it. I appreciate these series because I think they do a lot of good. So thanks for organizing them. Rex, are you on?
I am. Can you hear me?
Hey, Rex, you made it to Napa.
I did.
Good man. Did any speed limits broken?
My wife was driving.
Smart man. This evening, we're very fortunate to have Rex Mays of Williams Soaring joining us to share his experience with maintaining gliders. And before we get into the conversation, I think a little background is needed. In 1984, Rex took over a Northern California soaring commercial operation. And over the years, Rex, along with his wife, Noelle, and now their sons, have built Williams Soaring into one of the country's best soaring operations. Rex holds several advanced ratings, including CFIG, DPE, commercial SEL, glider, private, multi-engine land, A&P,
I got it.
an IA, and a repair station chief inspector. Anybody with that many abbreviations after his name deserves respect right there. Rex is also the Alexander Schleicher representative for the United States, and his role includes sales, repair, and maintenance for all AS gliders. This includes, of course, the ASK 21. He operates an FAA certified repair station that specializes in composite repair and refinishing. And I have to say, over the years, Rex has seen about every conceivable issue with glider maintenance in the club environment that there is. Appreciate Rex taking time out of his busy schedule tonight. And Rex, I've got a couple questions that we probably ought to start off with.
Sure. Thank you for that introduction.
What kind of repairs come into your shop commonly that you see, particularly from clubs, but just common things that people up on that end up in your shop?
I gotta say, the most common thing is cosmetic repairs, wingtip, belly scrapes, getting over the nose, gear door damage from loading into trailers. You got your gear up landings from time to time, few years. Every once in a while, you get canopy, break damaged canopies, damaged canopy hinges. But I'd say a majority of our day-to-day hours are put into a lot of cosmetic repairs.
Okay. Where would a club pilot start if they wanted to know, say, about what the FAA requires and what the manufacturer requires in maintaining a glider? A specific glider, let's say they fly the ASK 21 a lot and they go, well, I'm really interested in what the manufacturer thinks needs to be done. And I'm really interested to understand what the FAA is going to require me to do. What resources would they look at to figure that out?
Well, one would probably be most disappointed in looking at the maintenance manual. It's pretty thick, lots of words that say nothing about what you can do, can't do. I haven't seen a single aircraft maintenance manual that had much information about general maintenance. They go into various systems. It's usually not too much about how to repair anything. Usually they're kind of some details about and a description of the systems, but I've found very little information over the years. It was very helpful in determining how to make particular repairs, and the maintenance by and large in gliders that we do is largely cleaning. Annual inspections. We spend more time taking apart stuff and cleaning it, getting rid of dirty grease, gritty grease, especially from desert climates. So repairs that people can do, like in a club, cosmetic stuff, and there's quite a broad thing that a lot of people can do themselves in terms of the cosmetic repairs. You can go right on into applying gel coat or urethane paint to fix nicks and dings. Where we started getting a little gray areas if the fiberglass structure beyond the paint is damaged, then we start getting into different classes of repairs, and then you got to decide, should be determined how deep repairs are in terms of the structure, and then what materials ought to be used. We've dug into over the years, uncovered some pretty surprising repairs. Made by
Like we're losing you a little bit, Max.
unapproved material to repair that structure. Can you hear me?
I think so, yeah. That brings up an interesting question, and that is maybe the difference in categories between, say, experimental and standard, and who can work on what kind of thing? And what?
Yeah. That's a good subject. You know, a lot of people think that because it's experimental, I can do anything with this. I don't need to be a certificated repairman. And that's probably the biggest misunderstanding. There's very little somebody that is not a repairman, FAA repairman, you know, A&P mechanic or IA can do in terms of repairs and return to service things. The only people that can there's preventative maintenance, like changing tires, you know, even changing brake pads and things like that. But there's not a lot that you can do on gliders that's outside what you have to have a mechanic license to do in terms of repairs. A lot of this is subject to interpretation. Some people would be afraid of pulling the seat pan out, pulling, you know, 10 to 15 screws out and pulling the seat pan out, putting it back in. What harm can that do? Well, if you don't do it right, don't know what you're doing, and you put it back in improperly, we've had people that did this and couldn't and got things wrong and got up in the air and didn't catch it in pre-flight, and couldn't release because they couldn't find the knob, the release knob. And well, how did you get hooked up to the tow rope? Well, somebody did it from underneath a CG hook and never had to pull the release knob. And it put a seat pan back in and hid the release knob, never caught it. You know, it seems pretty far out there. I hope it is, but it's happened, you know. So, but in terms of what can and can't be done, that is a big misunderstanding. You know, wherever it rears its head, if people are being careful and you know, they can sort of bend that rule a little bit, as long as you can do the same careful work that anybody, whether he's got the license or not. There's plenty of licensed mechanics that can make mistakes and do things that don't seem to be very careful, and have to answer for it. But you know, along those lines in the club, I've seen a lot of things done, modification. It's not so much maintenance or repairs, it's modifications, that and unapproved modifications, namely in the realm of putting weight in. We had a club that had a DG 100, little 101, and it was being flown by a real big guy, and he got tired of not being able to thermal it slowly, so he took the rudder off, stuck the lead in the tail, didn't tell anybody. And then people started flying and complaining about why this thing seemed a little bit tail heavy. And it was years before we found out what had happened, because I pulled the rudder off and go, who put all this weight in here? and luckily nothing ever bad happened, but it was probably, you know, pretty close to the FCG for a lot of people who were flying it. And so that was kind of unfortunate. But
Rick,
I could tell you all night about anecdotes.
yeah.
Like that.
One of the things in our prior conversations is said that when a glider comes into your shop, you can sort of tell whether it's a club glider or a privately owned glider by looking at it. And could you expand on that a little bit? I mean, what are you looking at that's in a club glider that's different from a privately owned glider, for instance?
Well, generally it's you can look at somebody's car inside and say it and get an idea how tidy they are, right? And some people get in the car and it's looks like it just came off the showroom floor, even if it's 10 years old. And other people, you can they have every, right? And some people can eat in a car and you wouldn't tell the difference. People eat in a car and you can. And so the thing about club members is it often it's you have not just one guy's mess to clean up. You have maybe 5 or 10 people that fly the thing regularly. And if all of them don't treat it like it's their personal glider, then things start coming apart at the seams a little bit. And so a lot of it's just stuff that gets left in the gliders that's and then scattered around. You can tell that, like microphones, the gooseneck microphones get overstressed, and then somebody says, well, I can fix that, and they'll have a homebrewed fix to it, and then it gets added on maybe several times. So and then it's just tolerated. It looks like nobody. Everybody say, well, I guess that's a reasonable fix, or nobody knows enough to say that's not a reasonable fix, and let's get this fixed properly. But it's just kind of a sense you get when you open the cockpit and go, yeah, this looks like it's got a lot of people living in it instead of just one careful person.
Yeah. On a specific level, can you talk a little bit about, we got a lot of questions about finishes. So can you talk a little bit about the difference between, say, gel coat and polyurethane, and what the trade-offs are there?
So gliders, for the first 20, maybe 30 years of fiberglass glider manufacturing, that's all they knew was to put finish them in gel coat. With gel coat is a polyester material that is put into the molds, and before the fiberglass is laid up, the composite structure is laid up, and when it comes out of the mold, the finish is mostly there, and they just have to polish it and send it out the door. And it's for the most part, a very durable paint. If you have a gel coat glider, it doesn't scratch very easily, or as easy as urethane maybe, and hardly anything will hurt it in terms of solvents. You can clean it off anything. You use lacquer thinner, acetone, very, very little. Even some paint removers won't even touch it. But it's actually quite porous in the surface, even though it's kind of, some of them are harder than others. It can shine up with a hard wax or a hard buffing type style. You could get a really good shine, it's a nice polished look, and it can be very durable. But because of its porous nature, it doesn't have very much. It's not durable for very long. In terms of not very many years. About the 10-year mark, even if you're taking pretty good care of it, you'll start seeing degradation of the finish, and almost all of the gel coats start to crack. They crack along the stress risers of the last sanding scratches that the factory put in before they polished it. Typically, Schempp and Schleicher and LS had notoriously there are 2 gel coats, and those 3 companies used a gel coat that failed faster. DG and Grobe used a gel coat that lasted a lot longer, and it went in the mold thicker. When it failed and it cracks. It's more localized cracks that emanated out of spoiler boxes, and cracks like DG would have a crack that would come down, make a couple turns, and run out to the wingtip. But you wouldn't get overall widespread crazing when it fails. The Schempp, Schleicher, LS, when those gel coats start to fail, you have this overall widespread, crazing. That crazing, each one of those, the space between the lines, what we call crazing, become essentially tiles. And the whole finish becomes fractured into millions of tiles, and each one of those tiles start to curl and shrink, and that's why you start feeling them. And the cracks open up eventually. And so then you go to urethanes. Enamel or a urethane has a much more, it's a softer paint. It's a more less porous paint. Water, sunlight doesn't affect it as much, and often they really just don't fail. They don't fail the same way. Sometimes, depending on how well the substrate was prepared. I back up with nothing. You can't put urethane in the mold, and so if it's got a urethane paint, Pick was one of the first ones that painted airplanes with urethane or enamel. They would pull it out of the mold, and then you have to sand and prep the whole thing and paint it like you would a car or any other metal airplane. And then you have adhesion problems sometimes. But it goes on much thinner than the gel coat does. When you spray a urethane paint, it goes, the mill thickness at the end is much thinner. So it's because of that, it's more flexible, it doesn't crack as much, but all in all, it holds up to weather much better. And it's almost as if we think a urethane paint is almost a lifetime paint. It won't. We don't know when you'll ever have to repaint because the paint actually fails if it's in the urethane. But if it's gel coat, we know that if it's 10 to 15 years old, it's getting to be where it's failing. And then the question is, how bad is it before you have to paint it? And that's a very subjective subject.
Yeah, that leads into exactly my next question is we have gliders that are in both those camps. We have a lot of cracking on a couple gliders, and then a couple of Schempp gliders are starting to do this crazy environment. And when does it go from sort of an aesthetic to you're going to need to take care of this, get this refinished in the next year or so? What's that look?
That's the $30,000 to $40,000 question, John.
Yeah.
So in Australia, they had some very clear guidance about this back in the 80s, and they don't tolerate much cracking. They say it's unairworthy, it has to be refinished. That's the only country I know that had any guidance and indicated the tolerance. Most other ones in this country, it's fly it until your AMP just refuses to sign it off, or you just can't stand it anymore, and you do put out of the trailer. But it really is difficult to, as an AMP, to say, hey, this really is unairworthy. Some of them are clearly when you have chunks of paint and exposed fiberglass or carbon underneath it, it's you can say that has to be covered up. Manuals indicate that you have to have a coating. You can't have bare substrate, but and those are pretty clear. When it gets to be just it's dog-eared and it's patched, and at some point I get to be where I'm saying that I tell a guy, I'll sign it off this year, maybe next, but you better be thinking about either getting somebody else to do this or refinishing it in the next several years. And so it really is a moving target. There is no real test to say that's absolutely airworthy or not that I know of.
Rex, what do you think about waxing? I know there's like two schools of thought. One is bar wax every year, and you get the big rotary on destroyer out, and or you do this say after every flight just as part of cleanup. spray on, spray off kind of thing. What have you seen in that?
My opinion is that um, a one-time wax for an airplane that's being used more than one time is like is not effective at all. It's a waste of time. And and some of these waxes, like the stuff that Wings and Wheels sells for years, that W wax steel and stuff, that stuff feels really good when you spend a whole weekend cleaning your airplane up, and it's so slippery. You hope not to drop your airplane when you put it in the trailer. It seems like you're doing a lot of work, and it'll look good for a while. I don't know how many Sundays it is before it's not effective at all. If you fly all year round with it and think you're gonna just do it once a year, I think you're fooling yourself. I tell people, put a coat of wax on of some sort for every 10 days of things in the sun. Are you still hearing me?
Yep.
Um,
Gotcha.
I think that's a rule of thumb. And then I also tell people, I don't think it matters what wax you use the simplest thing you can get. So if it's simple, then you'll do it. If it's difficult or time consuming, then you won't. And I don't think a lot of people say, I got to pull the airplane out, put up the wings on sawhorses, flopping back and forth. In my opinion, if you just use a simple cleanup spray detail kind of wax, every time you rig the airplane and sort of clean the bugs off it before you put it away, you'll see the benefits of that over the years. I personally, so my anecdotal evidence of this is, for years we kept our airplanes outside, maybe under a shade cover, waxed them every once in a while, but certainly not regularly. Until one year I started, and we just said, look, every week we're going to put another treatment of the spray wax, and we've had several different ones come through. And when I started doing that, it was a noticeable difference in how well that our fleet looked in by the next year. It was just I wish I'd picked this up early in my career. Now we keep the airplanes in a hangar, and we wax them. I'd say at least every 10 days there's another coat treatment of wax over the airplane as we're cleaning it up, because of the wax we're using, the spray, McGuire's. And the gliders just always look fantastic. Bugs come off it easier. It's just and it's very little effort. And so it's just not a big project when we're doing it this way.
To switch gears a little bit, Rex, one of the things that happens in a club or even a private owner, if they have a hard landing in a composite glider, they really plunk it in. What kinds of things should you look for to see if there's serious damage that the glider needs to be taken offline, or whether you escaped to fly again the next day?
Yeah, so good question. It's all what I've learned over the years is always worth taking as close a look as you can at everything around the gear and around areas around the gear. And in the case of a nose wheel for the K21, really take a good look. Sometimes it really does require pulling the front seat pan out and looking at that structure. It's very clear. If it's damaged, you'll see it. It'll be the glue joints and those structures will have definite whiting or deformation. They might be in the same shape, but you can see where it was flexed, and you'll get this area where it gets very light in color. where fractures occurred. From the main gear standpoint, if you have a lot of like a Perth product, like the discus, you can tell if something's yielded because the paint will be cracked around the welds. You have to look at it. Well, if it's just cracked, you have to make a determination how much did it yield. These things will take a lot of bending before they yield and crack and have something where you have to actually fix it. And there's a lot of them out there that just have these little tiny cracks around the paint. Yeah, it got landed hard a few times, and it's something's moved, but it moved back and it doesn't look. It's probably not weakened. But then you can also tell if it's moved far enough that it's just not in the same place that it was. Then you have to address it. And a lot of times the gear doesn't come up and down as smoothly anymore in some of these airplanes. But I think the biggest mistake people do is just do a cursory look, because they're hoping it didn't break. So yeah, I didn't see anything, go fly it. We did that on a K20, retorque it in. And I go, well, these things are pretty tough. It'll probably be fine. And then a couple days later, somebody said, you look at this. And I looked a little closer and oh crap. Yeah, she broke it. So we had to take it offline. It wasn't really apparent until we really took a good look at it.
One of the things that we struggle with in Boulder is that we tie our gliders down outside and we have a mouse problem. And I know that Bill has talked to you about mice, but do you got any magic mice advice?
Boy, I do not. You've heard all the things that some people seem to think work. By the time I see the mouse problem, it's usually pretty bad, and we're just seeing the results of it. Sometimes it's overnight. Sometimes it's clearly these things have been in there for a long time. I've seen Pegasus came in from the Bassett Club, and we pulled the seat pan out. You couldn't put another rat turd in that thing or a grass. It was so impacted, and these guys have been flying it that way. I mean, it stunk to high heaven, but they had this gopher, is that some noise emitting gopher steak that they would always put in there, and it'd been in there for months, and they just said, "Oh, we put that in there. It's got to be working." Well, it what?
Yeah.
And so the K21 came out of your area in Colorado, Canyons, maybe just was out here recently, and man, the wings were just full of mouse and squirrel or something excrement. It was amazing how much we got pounds and pounds and pounds out of it. We had to cut holes to get some of it out of it. It came in for a 3,000-hour inspection, and it was tens of hours that we worked on both wings to get enough out there where it wasn't, we couldn't hear it roll around when we could roll a wing back and forth.
Yeah.
It was a step.
We're running a little bit out on time, I think, right, Armin? Just a couple more questions, Rex. That brings up an interesting point. One of the things that we have in the club is a 505, a DG 505. Its 3,000-hour inspection is coming up. We get all sorts of interesting information from the standpoint of it's just nothing more than a regular extensive manual to it's going to cost you $30K. You better sell the glider tomorrow. And probably somewhere in between there is reality, but maybe you could comment on what an inspection of that, a 3,000-hour inspection on a 505, looks like.
Yeah, so on all of the 3,000-hour life extension programs, most of them are start at 3,000 and you get another 3,000 and so forth. They have different manufacturers have different criteria, but some of them, most of them have some mandatory replacement items like tow hooks, things like that. So if there's still two tow hooks in there, the nose and the CG hook, they're going to be, $300 or $400 a piece. And so there's that. If the seat belts are past 12 years at 3,000 hours, most people aren't gonna, it needs to be replaced. One of the things about this is that this 3,000 hour inspection program is it's nothing more than an annual inspection, except there's a report that you give to the factory in the case of Schleicher, and it's quite detailed, and they ask you to dimension a lot of some of the things like the hotelier balls, and there's a couple of things that they have some dimensional things in. And if it's within a certain dimension, you state in the report and you go on. But rudder cables are mandatory replacement items at 3,000 hours. So that's several hours, and rudder cable's not that expensive, but it's a couple $100. But it's a $500-700 endeavor, depending who does it. And then you hope you get the right length, and that the rudder pedals still line up and the rudders put in when you're done. And so Atelier fittings, connect the manual connectors, sometimes those are need to be replaced. In case of the K21, after 3,000 hours, probably not worn out that too much, but the 6,000 and 9,000, you're going to be looking at the rudder pedals, the pivot points, and the adjustment. Those bushings get so bad that you pretty much have to rebuild it. That's a lot of hours of taking stuff apart, rebuilding it. So the spoiler, the arms, because the airplanes are left outside, sometimes the spoilers fill up with water. That starts a corrosion process that if it's not caught in maintenance or in just preventative maintenance, then the bushings get bad and you have to replace them. Well, for that you have to cut 8 holes, and you cut a hand hole the size to put a hand in. That's $1,000 generally, and there's 8 of them. Well, 8 of them's not 8,000, but it's more than 1,000. So that's where changing the spoiler bushings can turn into $3,000 or $4,000. So in the case of that K21, I think it came in with what we were hoping for, maybe a couple $1,000 3,000 hour inspection. I think there was so much wrong with it and so much cleanup went into it, and I think it rolled out of there for like north of $20,000, and that club was not expecting that.
Rex, a final question. I know we're going a little long here, but occasionally a club member will break a glider, or a private member will break a glider. What can we do as a club to be a better customer for your shop? We've talked about this a little bit, and you've expressed an opinion that clubs don't really make great customers for one reason or another. And for us, we want to be better customers. So if we do damage a glider and bring it into a shop, what kind of things can we do to make sure that we're a good, desirable customer?
Well, we appreciate if we're only talking to one person and not a committee. And we don't get 5 different people calling for the same information. That's happened over the years. But that it comes in and that there's a consensus pretty quickly about what needs to be done and what gets done, what gets ordered. Sometimes that gets to be having to be decided by the committees, and the committees can't make a decision, and then the thing lingers around for a while. But I guess that was the biggest thing, is we want to feel like we're working for one customer and not 50.
Right. Okay.
And probably that's the biggest thing.
Well, Rex, I really appreciate you helping us out tonight and sharing your long information. It was just terrific to hear you and great to see you again. I know that you're busy, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Sure. If I want to do any more later on, I'm happy to do this kind of thing. It's yeah, I can try to find the time. I'm not all that busy, but seems like I am.
There you go.
John, if I may interject here, there's one thing that's been batted about quite a bit, and that is whether or not we can take the K21 above 18,000 feet, because it is a polyurethane finish. But I think what I've learned in this session is because when they take it out of the molds, it has the gel coat on it. And so you have gel coat even on a brand new glider that was originally finished with poly. It has gel coat underneath, and therefore you can't bring it above safely bring it above 18,000 without risking cracking the gel coat. Could you speak to that issue?
Yeah, I think like in the case of a refinished K21 urethane, factory urethane, the gel coat is very, very thin on it. And then it's got a thin coat of paint on it. So I would not take a DG 500 or such up to 30,000 feet and come down fast. Yeah, if it did an ASK 21 with urethane, I don't think the risk is not the same. Is it guaranteed you're not going to have some finish problems? Nobody can guarantee that. But I think you're better shape urethane airplane, even though it have gel coat. But specifically in the piece, put it on a lot thicker. And that's where those issues arose. It's the thickness of that paint, not the fact that it's gel coat, but it went in and is very thick mill thickness paint system. So that's safe to say. Take somebody else's glider to 30,000, not your own.
Well, I'm afraid your signal broke up there a little bit. So just to summarize, so the K21, you're saying we could take it up to 25,000, but probably shouldn't go higher than that? Is that what you said?
It really depends on how cold it is, and if you're under, if it's out in the sun, you're not under a cloud deck and keep the thing warm. Probably not a problem.
It's coming down. That's the problem, right, Rex? I mean, it's
yes,
from cold to down into the lower atmosphere that you generate the issues.
Yeah, you want to do that as slow as you can.
Yeah.
Of course, there's not a lot of scientific to support this, but I fixed Steve Fawcett's glider after he went up high and came down fast, and it was a DG, and it was amazing what the mosaic that airplane looked like when it came out of that situation. But I have not seen that many cases of that over the years.
Well, great. So if we probably should keep things moving here. If there's nothing else, John and Rex, are you concluded with your conversation?
Sure.
All right. Well, let me introduce John. I'm not sure that John really needs an introduction here. I think most of the longtime members of the club know who he is, but for those who don't, I've got a few points here on John, and it's quite a few, and I don't really know where to start or where to end. Lots and lots and lots of good things that you can say about John as a glider pilot. He's been flying gliders for 48 years and accumulated 3,850 hours, and he's flown 35 different types of gliders. From a club standpoint, he's been a member for 25 years. He's been president of 2 soaring clubs, including this one, the SSB. He institutionalized Workfest, and that's one of the reasons we're having him give this talk tonight. He was the first club member to fly more than 1,000 K out of Boulder. He's earned a diamond badge, number 377. In 1977, at age 18, he got his diamond badge. He's been in top 5 in regional competitions 28 times, top 5 in U.S. National 17 times, won 3 U.S. Nationals, including being the current 18-meter national champion. And that's probably the crowning glory here that we're really great that we have the 18-meter champ right here in our midst at SSB. He's been a winner in the Canadian Nationals, pilot on U.S. soaring teams, founding member of the U.S. team committee, SSA Achievement Awards, but he also wanted me to make sure that he mentioned his crew, Brenda of 32 years. And I gotta think that's something that not only gives him good technical support, but great moral support, and knowing that he's got a friend on the ground when he's in the air doing it. So with that, I'm going to give you John. And John, please tell us how to make our maintenance great again.
Thank you, Arvin. After that, I mean, to me, glider competition is sort of like being good at curling or something, right? I mean, it's kind of an unknown thing. So when I think about glider maintenance, it sounds like something that somebody else does. You take it to Rex and they do the maintenance on it. And I think we need to change that conceptualization of what the word maintenance means. And maybe we should use another phrase and call it glider care. And when we call it glider care, then it seems like we can do it. And I think that's what Rex just told us. When a club glider comes in, what it's missing is care. All the dirt and all the asphalt that we've tracked in it just stays there. Nobody takes care of that. So let's talk about glider care, big and small. And let's back up a little bit. And I'm not going to go into the specifics of what we're going to do. I'm going to kind of talk about how this operates within a club that I've seen over the years. And clubs in general, sort of the basic idea of a club structure is just a bit odd, especially to most Americans. It's the idea of shared resources and shared responsibility just is hard for some people to grasp. This idea that we're sharing the resources for an ownership society, if you will, is sometimes tough. The difference between a member, the term a member, and the term a customer can be kind of a gray area sometimes. We're members of the SSB. We're not customers of the SSB. Those are fundamentally different. You're a customer of Mile High Gliding. That's different. And then I think these structural kind of oddities that a club has often result in a challenging glider care environment because it's just easy not to get involved with this thing that glider care. We get in our cars, we come out, we fly, we get back in our car and we drive away. And that's not really being a member, that's being a customer. So the culture of caring needs to be fostered as part of a modern club culture where personal time is short and it's easy to pass on the responsibility. So you have to care about it. And then overlaid on top of that, the US doesn't have a really deep glider culture. Germany has a deep glider culture. 5 guys in the club all work for and retired from Champerf. I mean, you've got this kind of, well-known, well-understood world where the United States, we don't have much of that. We have some very good people in the SSB and we're super lucky. I mean, Bob Ferris, Alfonso, there's just a whole bunch of people that are really understand what they're doing, but that's not generally known in the club. So to me, there's 4 things to think about in club maintenance, or shall we call it glider care. One is recognition. And by recognition, I mean, it needs to register on, there's a glider care opportunity. there's a big scratch in the canopy. The canopy's dirty. We've got all this asphalt that's been tracked into the glider on a hot summer day. Those kinds of things are opportunities to do a little glider care. The second one is knowledge. And by knowledge, I mean what needs to be done and how. So we recognize there's a problem, the brake doesn't work, but we may not know how to replace that brake. So there's a knowledge issue here. And then the third thing is opportunity. And by that, I mean club infrastructure. How does the club internal infrastructure support the glider care that the members do? And we'll talk about these a little later. And then the fourth one and last one is really responsibility. And that really goes back to club culture. And that club culture thing is kind of what I alluded to earlier, the difference between being a member and being a customer. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But let's talk about the first one, recognition. I think we can all see that there's a problem with something in a glider. It doesn't have a mylar on one of the ailerons. That's a problem. And so what do we do about that problem, right? We have to have the knowledge how to fix that. And then we have to have the club infrastructure has to be there so that we have a way of cleaning off the old adhesive, finding the right size mylar, attaching it to the wing with the right size Tessa tape, and then putting the safety tape over the top. And that's not an easy process. And if that's attempted by somebody with no knowledge, it's worse than just leaving it alone and asking. And so the real first rule of working on any glider is kind of what your doctor would say, and that is do no harm. It's very easy to take a small problem and make it a big problem. And I'm an expert at this. and all of a sudden you're dealing with a lot of a bigger problem than the one you started with. So do no harm at first. And the second rule is ask. If you don't understand how to put the mylar back on the aileron on a ASK 21, ask somebody who does. Don't just go out there and wing it. Ask, get on the phone, call somebody, get a demo, whatever it takes. If you have to call Rex, he may charge you for it, but at least it'll be done right. It is really easy to damage a glider. So when you're working on it, knowledge is a really key element. And you can get that from experienced club members. You can get it from experts like Rex. You can read the maintenance manual if you're so inclined. Those kinds of things are helpful, but we really pick this sort of knowledge up kind of by osmosis, by being around gliders a lot and talking to people who know what they're doing. The knowledge also has to do with transparency and record keeping. What needs to be done when? When's the annual due? When's the 3,000 hour inspection due? What are the things we should be doing every day when we fly the glider? Rex says we should wax the glider every 10 hours. Do we do that? We don't wax it every year. I mean, if we did that, the glider would look a lot better. And it's easy to do. You spray on, spray off. It's not a big undertaking. And then the second thing, really the last thing I have under knowledge is know who the ship manager is. If you're flying the discus and you don't know who the ship manager is, it's going to be hard for you to talk to the ship manager about the brake not working or the ding in the whatever or the thing you broke or whatever it is. Know the ship manager. And by that know them, I mean get to know them, because these guys are putting a lot on the line to make these things happen. And I mean, just talk to Jack about what it takes to be a ship manager, right? Then there's opportunity, and this really goes into club infrastructure. And really the question is, are the materials available to do the work needed? Are they easily available? If you require somebody to go out and figure out what kind of tape and what kind of mylar and what kind of safety tape is needed, and then buy it from Wings and Wheels and bring it in, guess what? That'll never happen. It really takes a dedicated person to go down that path. So the idea that there's an opportunity to do a little glider care is really helped if those materials are there in the shack ready to go. And I don't mean it has to be technical. I mean, it can be simple as water buckets, a towel, canopy cleaner, tape, you know, and those kinds of simple things allow club members who want to do the right thing, which I think 99% of us all do, to actually do the maintenance or glider care needed. If they're not there, then it makes it a lot more difficult. And then this is kind of the touchy-feely part, but it's responsibility, and responsibility really comes down to, in my mind, club culture. And organizational culture is described kind of as a liquid, not a solid. And by that I mean it's the norms and procedures and expectations that a club has for how we do things. And how we do things, that moves around over time. So some things get lost and some things are added in, and that culture needs to be enhanced, if you will. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that we can do as a club is maintain a forward-thinking, kind of an aggressive idea of what it means to maintain or care for our gliders. So if you got to kind of think, do we have an organizational culture and expectations for maintaining our glider fleet in good condition? Is that our culture? Do we do that? And so I think as club members, that's maybe something we can back up on and think about a little bit. So good maintenance practices really take hold when there's a culture of caring, combined knowledge of what to care for. Club members need to be trained from their first flight on how to do upkeep, big and small, and what to look for and who to ask in a maintenance issue. This usually comes from like an instructor or a fellow club member or Rex, somebody who's a professional at this. But that kind of engagement is required, I think, to do good club maintenance. And I've got kind of a short list of things that I try and do when I fly my own glider, but also I try to do when I fly club gliders. And it really starts with the pre-flight inspection in a lot of ways. When we do a pre-flight inspection, we're looking for things that are obviously flight related, but things like, do we carry a flashlight when we do an inspection? Maybe that ASK 21 that was in Al Canyon, somebody looked in the wing one day with a flashlight and said, holy mackerel, there's a lot of, mouse droppings in the wing. Maybe we should do something about that. You can't see everything in a glider, but a flashlight helps. We need to develop good habits. And I try and do this. Good habits are really key. And this goes into safety as well. The things that you do and habitualize can save your tail in safety. You know, just a simple thing like when you launch, do you have your fingers on the release for the first 150 or 200 feet? Because if you have to figure out where the release is when you're veering off the runway because you're ground looping or the tow plane catches on fire, whatever happens, that's not a good scene. If you already know where that is and you just habitually put your hand there, when something happens, you're ready for it. Things like always close and lock the canopy. Rex talked about broken canopies. That's a $6,000 out the window, and your insurance agent will not appreciate that. Take a tail dolly off when parked. When a dust devil goes through or the wind comes up, glider's got a tail dolly on, it rotates around, hits a wing someplace. I mean, I've seen this at contests over and over again where people don't do this and they either get yelled at or somebody goes over and takes their tail dolly off. The other thing would be turn up early and stay late. Turn up early before it's time to fly. When I was trained, my flight instructor said from day one, I want you out here an hour and a half before I get here. And I want the glider ready to go, clean, ready to go, pre-flighted, everything done, checked, because when I come out here, you and I are going to go through the pre-flight together, and then we're going to go flying. I'm not going to stand around and watch you wash the glider, and it's going to get washed. And my instructor was an all-league at USC tackle. So when he said he'd flip you for it, he meant he'd literally flip you for it. So that's a good policy. if you're in a big hurry and you land at 4 o'clock and you have to be somewhere at 4:30, are you going to spend the time it takes to really put that glider away well, or are you going to be in a big hurry to get off the airport? So give yourself some time before and after. Your instructor will absolutely love you for this, I got to point out, because the glider will be all set to go when he gets there. That's a good thing. One of the things I would suggest is that we bring back the squawk books in the gliders. Historically, this is one of those cultural liquid problems in that there was a little, book in each glider, and the pilot would write down the date and what they had a problem with. There's a ding on the left aileron that looks like it might be a problem. You might want to check this out. And that seems kind of corny, but you could look through that book when you got out to the airport after you flew, after the guy flew, and you could go through this book and say, oh, hey, 3 pilots ago said the brakes were soft. I might not want to land this glider right behind the Mile High 233 on the runway if I know a guy somewhere had bitched about the brakes in doing this. This helps safety, and it also helps in maintenance, because the ship manager can look in that and see what the problems are that people have experienced. It doesn't take the place of calling the ship manager and saying, hey, you know, I've got a ding in the aileron, I'm not sure whether it's airworthy or not. But that's something that needs to be thought about. And the other thing is, and I've said this before, is really get to know the ship manager, because they're kind of the point of contact for things that are big. Things like the brakes, the inspections, the comm doesn't work, other kinds of things like that are kind of beyond the average person's knowledge base. The ship manager needs to be brought in on. And I guess the last thing I have, well, close, is don't wait. We started Workfest because there was so much deferred things going on at the club. I mean, from, you know, the pile of branches that block the gate to, you know, the gliders just getting zero attention beyond, just zero attention beyond what the ship manager did. And Workfest was originally designed that Mike Exner cooked up a bunch of brats. We had a bunch of tables and chairs out there. We had the wives come out. We had a big kind of a party after we worked all day. And because of a couple different reasons, that's gone by the wayside. But don't delay things and say, oh, well, that'll be a Workfest thing. If something is going on with the aircraft that doesn't look right, don't postpone it. Ask somebody, get involved, recruit somebody, get it done from that standpoint. And I guess I'd like to sum up by saying really good glider care, at least in my world, starts with recognizing there's a glider care issue. That's important. Then having the knowledge to fix it or ask about it. And then having the opportunity to use the supplies at hand or finding them. And at last, feeling the responsibility to see whatever you found through to make sure it actually happens. Don't just get back in the car and drive away without taking some action to mitigate that. And I know in my own glider, that's what I do. When I see something that's wrong, it's got a ding in the leading edge because of a rock hit it, I get out some gel coat and fix it. And that's, you know, maybe a knowledge issue, but it's also a recognition of the problem and then being able to take some action to fix that. And that's not the nuts and bolts of how to maintain things. That's just kind of the club culture that has to be in place to make maintenance a successful outcome. And really what we want is when we take our glider to Rex, he can't tell whether I've owned it or the club's owned it, right? So that a private owner has the same aircraft that the club has. And that would be kind of, you know, what we're shooting for. Any questions?
John, you mentioned record keeping as part of this, and you didn't really expand on that. What are some of the critical aspects of record keeping? Like when I change a tire on Sierra Gulf on the tube, I put that in the logbook. Is that overkill or not?
That's perfect. But the problem is, where's the logbook?
In the shack.
Okay. And so what we need is the guy who flies that to look at that logbook and say, oh, hey, it just got a new tube and tire and the brake got replaced. That's great. That's good knowledge to have in your head when you go fly that glider, because then you have some idea of the history of what's going on. One of the beautiful things about being a private owner is you know the history of it. You know that it had a hard landing on this date and you've inspected it. You know that the water ballast system has a leak. In club gliders, that's not necessarily true because other things have occurred outside you being there. And so some way of transmitting that information from the unknown to the known is very good. Putting the logbook's a great start, and it's a great thing. It might be better if we had the squawk book and we just wrote it in the squawk book as well and said, hey, you could just flip through that a couple pages and you're pretty familiar with what's going on with that machine before you get in and strap in and tow off. Any other questions?
I have a question. John, it wasn't a question. You were just talking about mice for
Yes.
the private owners that keep their ships and trailers. I thought I'd just pass along what I discovered with mine. I was getting mice in mine regularly, and they weren't making a mess inside. They were inside. They were very neat. But I didn't want them in there. And what I finally came up with was that they were getting in through the tow hitch tube, just to let the private owners know that if you got a mouse problem, maybe look at the tube that goes into the trailer from the front that your hitch is connected to. Mine is hollow. And it was just a pathway for the little buggers just to hop straight in. And
That's a good point. I saw this a couple of years ago when I had a mouse problem and I opened the trailer and there were 3 mice in there and they all beat a beeline for the open end of that tube and ended up coming out the front by the tow hitch, and off they went. And from that moment on, I cut out a 2x4 and stuffed it into that tube in the Cobra trailer. Problem solved. So yes.
Exactly. But what I did, I heard I had a problem with mice getting into my pickup at one location, and somebody told me to use steel wool and stuff it in the holes. And my pickup has holes in it and sort of old. But anyway, I just popped some steel wool into the tube. I haven't had a problem since. It's been probably about a year now. So just to let the other guys know, just in case you're running into a problem.
You increase the gross weight of your pickup by about 500 pounds with all holes, right?
You know it.
I have a quick point to make, and that is the scale of time that's involved in glider maintenance is you need to plan on lots of time. There's just no reasonable excuse to not spend that time. A private owner probably spends 40 to 80 hours a year maintaining their ships, and the club needs to do the same. And if Rex is still on, I have a question about the paint sealant that we talked about in the past. Have you found that that's effective on painted gliders as opposed to gel coat?
I'm not sure if I understand what you meant by sealant. What paint sealant?
Well, the paint sealant that we had been using from Adams polishes that Scott Westfall had kind of turned you on to.
Oh, well, talk to Scott about that. He actually never got me in, so.
Oh, okay. Well, I've been.
I wanted to do that. We have not. I've just never really hooked up with him about that.
Okay.
Down.
We've been putting that on our K21, and I wanted to make sure that that was not a bad thing.
That brings up another issue. Are we still on?
Oh,
And something that Bob Caldwell brought up, and that is maintenance also goes beyond just the glider. And when we talk about the trailer, we normally talk about trailer tires. because I've seen all sorts of wreckage occurs to gliders because trailer tires have been on there for 25 years. They have blowout, go off the rim, and you know, if the glider trailer survives, then the trailer itself is damaged one way or another. And what Bob suggests is trailer tires can get old even though they look fine. So if you look at them and they're on there for 25 years and they look great, you're probably not looking at the right thing. Bob suggests that we replace the tires at least once every 5 years. And that's especially true if they just sit there. If they're out in the weather and they just sit there and they're not used, then Bob says that it's actually better to use the trailer than just let it sit. And he also makes the point that get specific trailer specific tires. They have more lateral stiffness in the sidewall and they reduce the tendency for trailer sway. And so those are points that Bob brought up. And I think that's a very good one because I've seen lots of trailers go south and some gliders get damaged because of bad tires.
Hey, John, can I add a quick one to that?
Sure.
Brakes. So I just moved my trailer from New York. And when I hooked it up, fortunately, I went 2 miles and stopped. And one bearing was cooking.
Yeah.
And I went down to the local wheel store. They fixed the brakes. They replaced the tires. And it was a $200 investment that may have saved me $100,000.
Yeah. There was a guy at the Nationals that brought his brand new Cobra trailer, and both one brake lock, and it baked the wheel, and the trailer set up on blocks in the middle of the airport for like 2 weeks while he was trying to get the other bearings and things. And there's this poor trailer sitting there. He flew the task every day, but he could never land out because his trailer couldn't move. So it was kind of a testimony to watch your brakes, particularly in a Cobra world.
John, when we talk about a spray wax, what are we talking about? Because I just ran into a situation where I was going to make it look good with a little of the silicone spray because it made it look sharp and smooth. And what I found out when it comes to gel coat repair,
Yeah,
that's just a friggin' nightmare.
don't go there. The silicone is not to be used on gliders, whether they're polyurethane or gel coat. And the reason is it can make the bonding of replacement layers more difficult. Rex may want to speak to this. I'm sort of parroting what I've always been taught, and I haven't really talked to an expert like Rex on it. Rex, should we wax all our aircraft with silicone?
Generally not, if you can avoid it. I've done repairs over silicone. I've never seen any of the doomsdayers say, "Oh, you can't do this," and it's a tragedy. But I have been, when it comes to paint repairs and stuff with airplanes. Just one of the worst heavy silicone spray is Pledge furniture wax. Dale Bush used to just flood. It looked fabulous for years until I tried to do some paint work. And I go, oh my God. And so if you can stay away from the silicones, just do it. It's actually a tough time to find a wax that has 0 silicone in it though. And so, but if you don't seek out silicone if you can avoid it.
Yeah. The two main.
Sorry, John.
Yeah, go
on
ahead.
that one, Rex. What about cleaning canopies? Have you got any comments about that?
Yeah. Just, man, canopies are, if you want to really keep them good, it's a lot of upkeep to keep a canopy scratch free. I don't have a silver bullet. You just got to be really careful about the rag you use, the material you use. Copious amounts of water is the best thing. Usually, if it's really dirty. But man, I don't have a silver bullet. You just have to be.
Yeah. What I do is and this is sort of refined over the years, is you go down to McGuckins and get yourself a nice stuff bag, and then while you're there, pick up quite a bit of cheesecloth. Cheesecloth is pure cotton. It's very soft. It's very sort of like the microfiber of the ages. And then dump the cheesecloth into the old washing machine, wash it, and then in that stuff bag, put your cheesecloth and your canopy cleaner, and I use Plexus, I think it is, from Wings and Wheels, and then a spray bottle with water in it. And what you're trying to do is when you clean a canopy, it's got some micro dirt on the top of it, and if you just start cleaning it, you're going to scratch the bejesus out of it with that dirt that's already on the canopy. So because we don't have water at the field, your spray bottle is essentially your water. Wet it down, get your cheesecloth out, do a nice pass so that along the nose to tail direction, so any scratches run that way. And then once you get all the dirt off of it, then you can sort of think about the idea of using Plexus and the rest of your cheesecloth to polish that out. That's the best thing that I've found. And once you get it clean, don't clean it every day. Leave it for as long as you can. And the other tip is keep your canopy cover off when you trailer it, because I noticed that when the canopy cover's on in the trailer, you get this sort of micro rubbing of the canopy cover with the dirt between the canopy and the canopy cover and the canopy. And guess what? It's worse on the canopy than leaving it open. So those are the things I've learned.
And I just throw in one thing that I was told by a gentleman that does glider repair, was using the microfiber towels. Always use a new towel.
Yes.
So when I've run the towel over the canopy, it goes in the bag. I use it for other cleaning. It doesn't go back on the canopy.
Right. That's exactly right. Because I mean, what you're trying to do is just keep any dirt from getting in where you're polishing or rubbing on the canopy. And you got to be fastidious about it. Otherwise you'll just scratch it. Anything else?
Well,
Back to the microfiber new towels, that is usually an issue that we don't have new towels in our cleaning cabinet there. I suppose we ought to have somebody in charge of that with cleaning supplies, so we always have new towels for that. And then you could always then have the used towels for other cleaning and waxing, but some way to have a new one available every time we have to do a canopy.
Well, I mean, getting back to sort of the classic opportunity part of it, I recently had a check ride with Bob Ferris, who did a really great job. I really enjoyed it. And I noticed that the 505's yaw string was going south. So I decided to replace it. Okay, this should be a 3-minute job. 40 minutes later, I was finding the scissors and finding the yaw string, digging up the tape out of my car. And those things should be really easy. There should be a yaw string kit. Here you go. 2 minutes, you're done. And that kind of stuff is something that the club can really support the membership and the maintenance if those things are readily available.
we have had a discussion about adding a facilities manager who would be like a ship manager, except for those kind of supplies, for the types of tools that we need. Somebody who does our ground equipment. So our ground equipment manager, I guess we should say. So that is in the works, and I think we'll probably have more discussion on it as we get into Workfest.
Yeah,
I think we need to look for volunteers, Sword.
Go, Rex.
I said to Armin, if you find a guy, I'll hire him.
Well, we pay pretty well here at SSB, so we should be able to find somebody.
Unfortunately, it's in craft beer, but hey.
Well, or we'll do like the British Navy did in the 18th century and just press them into service. What I did.
John, another question. You were talking about changing out the string. Underneath the string, you've got adhesive that might be on the canopy. What, I remember you telling me once, I've forgotten what to use to remove the adhesive glue from the canopy.
This is a fantastic question for Rex, because Rex knows more about this than I do. I've done it wrong every possible way. The thing that I know is don't use anything like acetone or anything, particularly around the areas where the canopy's been machined. If there's a you know, like a screw hole or anything like that, anything that's a solvent of any type is death. Rex, what do you clean goo off the canopy with?
Find anything but acetone. Acetone is the only thing that really kills. Acetate, remember, acetate is the acrylic, and acetone will eat it. You need to have some sort of petroleum distillate to cut through the stickum from the tape. There's no natural stickum that they use in tape that will that a citrus product or, you know, something you can drink will take off. And so but lacquer thinner generally does not attack the acetone. And I tell people, if you think you got something, I'm sorry, the stickum, whatever you use, go to the very back corner of any canopy and rub some on there for a while and see what it does. And if it eats it, stop. And but if it doesn't, then you're probably okay.
I've used WD-40 for it takes a little rubbing, but it eventually off. And
I never
it's
tried
not
it. It
gonna
sounds
hurt
like
anything.
it some sort of any of those type of we call it penetrating oils and things like that will tend to eat without destroying. I'd find something that really works and just, you know, put it somewhere that says this is what we use for our yaw string removal stuff. But you do really have to be careful. The acetone will absolutely, it is the one thing that I can guarantee it will damage the plant.
Yeah.
Is Goof Off an acetone type product?
I don't know, and I know people have used it and say, but I've never been able to find it. I'd love to try it, but I couldn't tell you.
It's illegal in California.
Yeah,
You might be right, Al.
anything that works is.
I'm coming out next soon.
Breathing's illegal in California. You produce CO2 gases when you breathe.
All right.
Sounds
with
like
that-
it's good wine.
Yeah.
You do make good wine, that's true.
All right. Why don't we, unless there's any more questions about maintenance, we can move on to the K-21's maintenance program. John, do you have anything else, or does anybody have any more questions for John?
No, I would just like to thank Rex again. And like I said, if you have any questions about what to do, ask somebody. I'm happy to take questions. Call me up. Somebody sent in an email and said, you know, I'm thinking about bar waxing my glider. You know, teach me how to do that. Well, that's about a day course because it takes a lot to be able to bar wax a glider effectively and not break something. And so, you know, I'm happy to answer questions. And I know there are a lot of more experienced people in the club with this kind of thing that if you just asked would be a resource.
All right. Well, John, thanks so much. Rex, thanks so much. The next part of we're going to introduce Bill Kaewert, who's the ship manager on the K-21. And we're going to be doing a Workfest that's specifically a K-21 Workfest. Bill, are you here somewhere?
Yes, I'm here. And first, I want to thank John and Rex for organizing the maintenance. This was a good review and a lot of new information too. So thank you very much. The first thing I'd like to say is to recognize Sharif Abdallah, who is the new co-manager of the K-21. Sharif and I are ship managers. So thank you, Sharif.
Sure thing.
The next thing I'd like to do is just do a quick review of the tasks that we have agreed on for the K-21 and talk about the date, introduce some team leads, and and we'll conclude. This won't take too long, but the first of 7 tasks is Roten Control. It's colloquially known as the Rat Patrol, but this is a really important task because when we did the annual last fall, we saw a lot of evidence of rodent droppings. Clemens, thank you again for your help in helping me clean that out, but it was a lot of vacuuming, a lot of solvent and stuff to get that crap cleaned out. And unfortunately, there is still some in the wing that we could not get the vacuum to, but that we could see with a borescope. So it's important to keep them under control. So Seyu has volunteered for this, and Seyu, I haven't met him yet, but I want all of you guys to thank Seyu when you get a chance for taking this on. It's not a fun task, but it's really important. So thank you for taking on the team leadership for this, and that will carry on for some months, and we will recruit a new lead for that task. The second of the tasks is to inspect the existing instruments and repair them. We have an altimeter problem with, I'm not sure which one, but Bob Ferris has volunteered to do that, to replace that. We also need somebody to help out to inspect the pneumatic plumbing for issues like cracks and kinks and so forth, just to take a look at what we can see to see if there are any known issues. The variometers are not zeroed, and so those need to be zeroed as well. Oxygen system maintenance and cleanup, we want to inspect for leaks, and the O2D2 is mounted in there with Velcro. It's missing its battery clip, and I understand that in turbulence sometimes the batteries pop out and the oxygen system stops working. So we got to get that fixed up. I will be leading that team. There's a buff, wax, and basically buff and wax. Andrew Ainsley is offered to lead that. Thank you, Andrew. Basically, we want to smooth that down, get a good coat of wax on it this winter yet. We'll do that inside in a heated hangar. And really that's to put a good base on. And then I think this really like the spray wax that can be done after every few flights. I do it on my own glider after every flight. The stuff works great, and it's like flying a new airplane all the time. It really works nicely, and it's easy to use.
What's the brand you're using for this?
I can't remember. I'm not in my house right now, and it's not at home, and I haven't seen it for months since I last flew it in the fall. But I'll send it out.
Bill, a good one is the 3M wax. The 3M Marine Wax is a fabulous product.
Yeah, actually, this is a Carnauba wax, or Carnauba wax. Not sure how you pronounce it, but I'll share with Andrew. You could share with what you're using. I'll do the same by email. Next item, we've had a squealing radio in the ASK-21. Bob has actually already replaced that radio with a reworked unit, but we have some other tasks. For example, the microphones, the boom mics are on some improvised brackets. There are microphone wires running through the rear cockpit that need to be concealed. There was a joint that was not soldered, and so there's some. We want to make this look like a first-rate airplane rather than something that hasn't had attention. So that's the radio team, and then we will be next team is to improve the FLARM anti-collision avionics. Today we have a FLARM portable in there that is going to be replaced by the power FLARM from the DG505, which will be receiving a new fusion, and we will also be providing a dedicated FLARM view display for both the instructor pilot and the student pilot in both cockpits. So that the fusion has been ordered. As soon as those are available, then we'll do the swap with Papa Bravo. And then the last task is to reroute and conceal remaining cockpit wiring. On the left side of the cockpit, there is a wire running sort of through the front cockpit to the rear cockpit. Really the point of this is to bury all oxygen, low pressure oxygen lines, bury the speaker wire, the microphone wire, any other data cables, and get those underneath the seat pans or somewhere else, such that we have a clean and well-organized cockpit, free of loose stuff. And so I sent out there's a more complete task description that went out to the club. And if anybody wants to see that again, check your email, or else I can resend it to you. As for the date, a lot of these tasks can be done at any time, but some of them, like the wiring and the oxygen and some of the other things where seat pans have to be removed, that we really don't want to be taking them in and out. So the plan, tentative plan right now is to fly the aircraft to Longmont to Elliot Crawford's hangar. He has offered to remove his aircraft over the weekend so that we can have that. Thank you, Elliot. And so that is to perform all the inside hangar tasks over that Saturday and Sunday. And the task team leaders will be responsible for organizing all materials, parts, and other things they need. So I, for example, have to figure out how I'm going to get the part for the oxygen, the O2D2, get the mounting brackets, and some spares, because inevitably one's going to break. So what I have to do is get all those things such that I've got all the parts, materials, tools, and so forth ready to rock by the 20th of February. So the team leaders will be, actually, let me just walk through who those are again. So Roten is Seyu. Thank you for leading that. Bob Ferris is leading instruments. Andrew Ainsley is leading buff and wax team. The Flarm team also led by Bob Ferris, and wiring led by Sharif Abdallah. There's going to be it's going to be fun with a bunch of people working on the plane. We'll probably have to wear, if we're really close to each other, probably have to mask up. But any questions so far? I went through this really quickly, but I know it's been a long meeting. Armand, anything I missed that you're aware of?
Do you have enough crew on all? Do all your team leaders have the teams? Do we have the horsepower, the muscle power, the talent power, all that we need? Have you filled out all the ranks?
No, thank you for asking. And so really what we need to do is for each team leader, really need to think about how much help you need. For example, I could use one person to help with oxygen. Andrew, you probably should speak up and say how many you'd like for the buff and wax team as well.
Yeah, I mean, it goes a lot quicker if there are 2 or 3. I do my own glider every year in about 6 to 8 hours. So, yeah, it's a bigger plane. So if there are 3 people, we can get it done in about 3 hours, I would figure.
So we need 2 to 3 volunteers for Andrew. So if people would like to volunteer for that, please contact Andrew Ainsley. I will send out everybody's. You can find it on flight log, but I'll send out emails of all the team leads after the meeting tonight.
What about Canopy?
We need somebody who likes taking care of canopies and knows what they're doing. I don't. I'm not sure. I think Andrew, you expressed some hesitancy there. So if Joe, if you know how to take care of canopies, or if somebody else does, I would really appreciate your help to volunteer for that team.
Yeah, I am terrified of polishing canopies.
Me too.
Yeah, I think Scott Westfall is kind of our default over many, many, many Workfests. Maybe approaching Scott as a lead, and then I'd be happy to help, but I got checked out in the back seat and it was, I don't know how the instructors see.
We don't want to.
Say again?
No, it's kind of a joke. Most instructors probably don't want to see, right?
That's what I was gonna say. I don't like to look. I mean, sometimes it's
I'll
That's where you're sitting back.
I'll drink to that.
no, it is better to look. One of the big problems we have with the canopies, and I try to train students to put their, we train to check that the canopy is locked before we take off, which is a good thing to do. The problem is a lot of students put their fingers on the plexiglass rather than on the frame. So I emphasize, use the frame, but they're reaching up over their head and they're feeling around. So inevitably the fingers, the first few times they try it, are going to hit so anyway, we got a lot of fingerprints up there. And yeah, it hasn't been cleaned.
Because I could use a tutorial myself. I've done it for 20 years, but you always can learn something, and Scott has always been our default go-to guy for canopies.
Yeah, I think
we could.
Summer tutorials are probably a good idea. I mean, because you could show somebody how to fix a ding and gel coat in 10 minutes, and that kind of thing wouldn't. You could just say, hey, at 9 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday, we're going to have a tutorial on how to clean a canopy. That's how knowledge gets transmitted.
And we need to do that rather than depending on one guy in the club.
Yeah, and when we get that one guy in the club that knows what he's doing, we're going to film it.
Exactly. We'll videotape it. Exactly.
Good idea.
Yeah, so we're going to video these things. It's going to be part of the ground school series. We're supposed to have a couple of them happening. You know how it goes in the weather and all that. But yeah, if Scott's going to come out and give a lesson on how to clean a canopy, let's video that and have it as part of the ground school series.
I gotta say, I give Rex apropos, whatever. I flew with Rex about 2 months ago, and I did that push up behind the canopy thing, and it was like I won't say my only demerit point, but he says, "Why are you doing that?" And maybe Rex will comment.
Yeah, so for all these years, this is a pet peeve of mine. When I'm in the back seat, I watch somebody push up on the canopy instead of just look over their shoulder and see if the thing is locked. That is the key. Pushing up can be a false positive. And but the other thing I wanted to talk about was the fingerprints. Forget about the fingerprints. Where they're putting them is right above your head. You're not gonna miss traffic by not seeing through a fingerprint. So I wouldn't worry too much about fingerprints and getting rid of the fingerprints, putting scratches in instead of fingerprints. I'd say cherish the fingerprints. They're a lot better than a cracked canopy. And so plan on letting people push up on a K21, push up on the canopy of glass itself when you're opening and closing the canopy rather than reaching through the hole or lifting up by the hole, lifting up by the rail, or lifting up by those pitifully weak paddles that they call handles.
Yeah.
I would take a fingerprint over damage any day. That's out.
Cheers.
Okay, so let's go back briefly. Thank you for that canopy diversion. Going back to instruments, Bob, is there anybody that, I had you signed up for the altimeter, the altimeter replacement. But in terms of inspecting the pneumatics, is that something you're okay to do? Would you like somebody to help you do that?
I could do it. I've got the syringe and I use a an airspeed indicator to look for leak down on that and just seal everything off. But I'm sure it leaks a lot. So, but the altimeter needs to be sent off for a overhaul. It's just the bearings are hanging a bit on that front one. So when we get a loaner from Elliott, we can swap that out and send it off probably for a week and a half overhaul on it.
Yeah, if someone's interested in learning how to leak test, that'd be great if you could show them, Bob, or if nobody else turns up. And please let me know, people, if you're interested in doing that. Otherwise, I'm going to I'd like you to train me because I don't know how to do it.
And the other thing I've done is when we were doing more religiously transponder checks, if you work with the transponder guys, they will calibrate the altimeter to the transponder. So I found that to be kind of a helpful thing, and I didn't realize you could do that. And in this case, it was for the Super Cub.
Okay. Flarm, Bob, is there anybody you want to have help you with the Flarm installation?
Not really. It's pretty much a one-person operation on that, and we'll find the best spot for the antennas, and that could be moved after it's installed if we don't find favorable reception on it. So yeah, I've already got in my mind the placement on that, and it's mostly we just have to wait for the fusion to come in before we can order the or before we can put the core unit from the Papa Bravo in there.
Okay. What are you thinking for the brackets to hold the Flarm views?
The back one probably through the back instrument panel itself, there's plenty of room, and the front one aluminum angle bracket on the top of the front glare shield underneath.
Okay,
right in front. So it's a good view in front that way.
Great. So you good fabricating those, or do you want help?
No, I can do that. No problem.
Okay. Going to wiring, this is going to be.
Yeah, I already reached out.
What's that?
Yeah, I already reached out to Bob and dropped him an email because Bob and I need to coordinate. We're both going to be in the cockpit. We're both going to be working on electronics. So we'll coordinate that and figure out who else we need to help with that, if anyone.
So you'll reach out to get more volunteers if you need them?
Correct.
Okay.
Bob, does that sound reasonable?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think I'm okay with the oxygen system. But yeah, I think I'm good. I just got to get on that. So yeah, I think we're good, Armand, unless other people have questions or comments. And
Anybody have anything? Okay.
If it stays cold, we're going to bring some space heaters for the hangar.
He's got a natural gas heater in there, apparently.
Wheat, even better.
Yep.
So if nobody has anything else, the only thing I have is, hey, when you hear from the people who are heading up these teams, the team leaders, please, let's all pitch in. It will count as Workfest. If you pitch in, it counts as Workfest, and we'll probably be doing multiple little Workfests this year. Rather, well, no, I take that back. Is Jason on?
Yeah.
Jason, you want to tell us a little bit about the other Workfests other than the K21 specific Workfest? What you have planned this year for that?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, we'll be doing a Workfest. It'll be a little different than in years past due to COVID, but we wanted to have a multi-day Workfest, and I'll be sending out an email that will kind of go over a sign-up list. So we'll have an online sign-up so that we don't have too many people signing up for each event. But we're eyeing March 27th and 28th as the Workfest dates. And then if the weather's inclement, we'll have a backup date of April 10th and 11th. But I think what we're trying to do is, not have, more than 2 or 3 people on a ship. So, in years past, we've had, 5 or 6 people waxing and, kind of taking part. But with COVID, I think we want to make sure there's not too many folks, congregating. And so we'll kind of have a sign up sheet where, 2 to 3 people can chunk off a task and get that work completed. And I think, a couple of years ago, we had a nice online sign up that I did that worked out pretty well. And it kind of shows you which task you're signing up for and how many people are signing up for that task. So be looking out for that. We'll have it broken out into a bunch of different categories that we had, looking at shacks and O2 cart and, maintenance and sharpening, lawnmower blades and all the Workfest accoutrement. And so, we're not going to have a fest, portion of the work. It's just going to be hard labor this year. So due to, COVID, I think, in the summertime, maybe we can, when everything's hopefully cleared up and there's not a bunch of, COVID concerns, hopefully we can have, fest portion and get together and enjoy each other's company. But I think for right now, we'll just try and, keep it, on the work. And then also, if people, can't make that weekend work, just to, have a little flexibility here with COVID and whoever's not comfortable working with other people, we'll have a sign up and a single person, or, maybe I can organize a couple people who couldn't make those dates, and we'll have, alternate dates or weekday activities so that you can get together and complete the tasks. And so Workfest, is mandatory. So, I encourage everybody to sign up and, get their name in, and then we'll just kind of check you off as things get completed. And again, if those dates don't work for you, shoot me a line, and we'll, get you on some task that can qualify for Workfest. But yeah, I'll be sending that out in the next couple of days, and just kind of clear March 27th and 28th for Workfest. And
Yeah, and as for Workfest, we may be going back. We'll have to get the board to approve this, but we may be going back to if you're not at Workfest, there's going to be a small fine for not being involved. And we just want to see everybody do something. So if all 150 or 130, depending on how you count it, if we all pitch in, hey, we'll get this done, and we'll be back to maintenance where it should be. We'll get the shacks cleaned up. We'll de-junk the maintenance shack. I'm thinking of just having a dumpster come out, and we'll take everything out of the shack, and then go through it and decide what we want to put in and what we don't want to put in. We'll dispose of one way or another. So any rate,
I'll also be talking with the ship managers, and Bill obviously has a good game plan going, and has his ship kind of well run and has a big task list. But we'll be talking to the other ship managers and seeing how through Workfest we can get them the bodies they need to complete their tasks. And so I'll be talking to the ship managers and trying to kind of dole out some folks to assist in other items besides just waxing and canopies and stuff.
all right. If nobody has anything else,
I've got something.
Jack, go ahead.
I would like to put out the request to this group and then to all members that I'm going to be needing a co-ship manager for the discus Sierra Gulf this summer. I'm going to be taking a little over 7-week trip to Oshkosh and a Michigan Upper Peninsula in the RV between last week of June going to the middle of August, and then the whole time at Oshkosh. But I would like to have someone to look after Sierra Gulf during that period of time, just to help me out there.
Okay, we'll add that to the list that's going to be sent around for volunteers.
Thank you.
And if there's nothing else, anybody else and have anything else to say or add? Clemens, do you have anything?
I'd like to just thank everyone for running this, you for organizing the series, Armand, John for his leadership in bringing the club culture back up to where it needs to be, Rex for giving his expert advice, all the ship managers, Bill in particular, for all the hard work to get the 21 organized, and everyone around that is pitching in. So Andrew, Sharif, CU, everyone who's been volunteering, Jack obviously as the ship manager for Sierra Gulf, all the ship managers, Bob Ferris for all the work that he's doing on all your work streams, Jason for helping bring the Workfest organized. I mean, I think one of the things that John said that resonates very strongly with me is that at SSB, we're members and not customers. And if nothing else, this call and everyone's participation has clearly shown that I think people get it. Everyone's pitching and everyone's working together, everyone's helping. And if we can keep that momentum and energy up, I think we will be all our way on the great trajectory to having awesome equipment and achieve the great flights that we want to achieve. So thanks everybody.
One thing, Clemens, is that soaring is a solitary sport, but it requires a social aspect, which is completely different from power flying, and we should celebrate that in some ways.
Yep.
May I say something? I've indicated maybe a pretty dim view of most clubs that I have engaged it with over the years, mostly in Northern California. No surprise there probably, but I'm impressed with you guys. This has been a great introduction. You guys seem to be top shelf. So,
Rex, coming from you, that's high praise indeed.
Boy, I would say on that note, which is happy and positive, perhaps we should conclude this ground school for this evening. And we'll see you all next week. Clemens will be the star performer. And I think everybody is just going to be, maybe John won't make a big deal for him and some of the other very accomplished pilots. But I think a lot of our up and coming pilots who are starting to fly around and trying to find a way to go cross country and try to do big OLC scores, but can't quite find the way to do it. I think Clemens has really put together a set of tasks that will take us there. I've reviewed it. They're not really finalized yet, but expect great things for getting our members who are just starting to fly away, and we'll get them kicked out of the nest and going long distances. So
you know what Carl Streetick says about it. Soaring is a lifetime learning experience. We all learn something from everybody.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah. And we are looking for I've identified 22 pilots who I call accomplished pilots whose average OLC scores are more than 300 per flight. And I think this will be a way that they can do some coaching on the ground without having to blow a good soaring day to soar with somebody else. So I think this will work for the whole club, and I think everybody's going to just be really impressed with what Clemens put together. So
Can't wait.
thanks. Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.